All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It is May 17th, and we are here for the May 17th meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners. As always, first, I'd like to call the meeting to order and then acknowledge that we are on Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded land of the Mi'kmaq people, and we are all treaty people. And we'll do a quick check of the cameras and audio for commissioners, starting with Commissioner McDougall.
Hello, I'm here and I think you can hear me, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Thomas.
Landell, I'm here. You can hear me clearly?
Great.
I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Blackburn.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully everyone can see and hear.
Yep. Live from the Beaver Bank bunker.
Indeed, we are.
Great. We have regret from Commissioner Beals, and we are also waiting for Commissioner Kent to arrive. And we have a special guest, Counselor Deagle Gammon, who's observing today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And we'll do a quick audio and video check just for the chief. So Chief Constella, if you're there, just do a quick audio and video check for you.
I am here, and just confirming you can hear me.
Yep, great, thank you. And Chief Gray.
Hello.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
All right, good to see you. Oh, Commissioner Kent, we see you've joined. Really quick audio and video check if you are able.
Thank you. I'm here. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. All right, so moving on to any community announcements. Does anyone have any community announcements for us at all?
I'm going to announce one. I don't know if this is the right place, but I'm anxious to, and I'll do it again on council night as well. But I don't know if anyone saw the Seattle Kraken, the new NHL team, that the hometown boy from Cow Bay, young man by the name of Luke Hammond, was the first NHL player to be signed to that team. So that's my community announcement. I've been busting to say it to somebody.
Right, love it.
Not necessarily appropriate here, but I had to get it out of my system. Thank you.
No complaints over here. Also, I'll announce that the vaccine appointments have been open to 30 to 35, I believe. So I finally have entered the club. So hopefully I can book my appointment soon for my vaccine. So looking forward to doing that as well. If there's no further announcements, we'll move on to the approval of minutes of April 19th. And I believe Commissioner McDougall, you did have a question on the minutes. Yep, still off mute. That's okay.
There finally.
Yep, there you go.
I've got, I guess, a very sensitive mouse that won't behave. Yes, I had a question about the minutes, page 5. And it's good that Marty's here with us too, because he could clarify this. So in this response, this was the portion about having legal counsel, outside legal counsel. And as I read this comment, it says Martin Ward, solicitor, clarified that Nova Scotia has a different policing model than other provinces, but because there is no independent police commission, I'm kind of unsure what that means. And I was also wondering about the comment that this was a committee of regional council. I was always under the impression that the Board of Police Commissioners was not a council committee as the others. appointments are made, but coming from the Police Act, it isn't really a committee of council. So I'm hoping we can get some clarity around that.
So if we, we'll hear from Mr. Ward, and then depending on the clarity, it might mean we have to amend or not amend the minutes, depending on the comments, Mr. Ward.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Chair? Okay. So I see the reason for the need for clarification here. The model of police commission that we have is different from that in most other parts of Canada, right? In the sense that in other parts of Canada, the police report directly to the police commission, and the police commission is in fact responsible for policing as opposed to the municipality. In Halifax, in Nova Scotia, the situation is that the municipalities' councils themselves are responsible for policing ultimately. But if they decide to do that, they can do it in several different ways. But if they decide to do that through having a police department, then they're required to have a municipal police commission, right? So that municipal police commission carries on civil governance on behalf of council. Okay, so in that sense, it's and it ties into your second request, or your second issue, and that is it's where a police commission is established. It's a statutory body under the Act. It's not a committee of council. Okay, council appoints most of the members to it, being councillors and other outside people, but the province also appoints a member to the committee, right? So it's a statutory body under the Police Act. It's independent of council in that sense. It's not a committee, but it does carry on civil governance on behalf of council. Does that help?
Sure.
It does help, and I'm just wondering if there should be something to indicate that, or in brackets or whatever, to just to further clarify it. It's not necessarily for us, but for future, and if it's on the record, then it doesn't have to be, continuously explained in the future.
So I'm wondering then, Mr. Clerk, is it possible to defer approval, and then Mr. Ward can look at that, the minutes, and make any corrections, and then we can approve it at next meeting?
We can do that. The other option is I'm looking at the minutes here. I think that we could even just approve as amended if you wanted, and take off the sentence because there is no independent police commission. And I think that would make it clear. But with not wanting to wordsmith in the middle of a meeting, it may be easier just to wait, defer. We'll bring back revised minutes to the next meeting.
Are you comfortable with making an amendment, or would you rather take a peek at it, Marty?
Well, I think you can approve the minutes subject to that, right?
Okay.
Subject to that, and then the clerk can make the amendments, and we bring it back next meeting and put it through. I think probably. I think probably what Commissioner McDougall would like is because this question comes up again and again, and I think she'd probably like some clarification in the public record. Probably. Is that correct, Commissioner McDougall?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Reading my mind.
So Ian, I'll take your Clerk, I'll take your guidance on what do you think the best approach?
I think that the way it was articulated is the best approach. We'll take these away, work with Marty, bring it back to the next Board of Police Commissioners meeting so that we don't have any confusion on it, and it's just very clear all across the board.
Excellent. So then that means we would just defer this item to next meeting?
Yep, we can just defer the minutes to the next meeting.
Okay, great. All
Thank
right.
you.
So meeting minutes have been deferred to next meeting for clarification on that item, independent legal
Sorry,
Comment?
Mr. Chair, I would just ask if we could do a vote to defer the minutes to the next meeting.
Right. So if we can have a mover for that item, please. Councilor
A
McDougall,
second.
Commissioner McDougall, thank you. Commissioner Blackburn, I think, or Kent.
Kent.
Yeah, Commissioner Kent, second that. All in favor? Aye.
Favor.
Opposed? Seeing none. All right, so that's been
Kent, yep.
deferred. Thank you. Thank you. That's been deferred. So approval of order of business. So are there any additions or deletions or members like to move things around at all? All right, seeing no additions or deletions, ask for motion to adopt the
So moved.
agenda. Thank you. Moved by Commissioner Blackburn, second by Commissioner McDougall.
Actually moved by Councillor Kent.
Okay,
We
got
sound alike, I think.
I know.
moved by Commissioner Kent, second by Commissioner Blackburn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Seeing none. All right, agenda is moved. A business arising out of the minutes, there are none. Declaration of conflict of interest, are there any at the moment? Seeing none. Consideration of deferred business, we have none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Clerk, any correspondence, petitions, delegations?
No additional correspondence has been received for this meeting today.
All right, great, thank you. The only thing that I will mention is I've had one, maybe even two requests for organizations wanting to present to the commission. And there is a process to do that. And I'm just wondering, while we're here in this meeting, as clerk, if you could just speak on if people want to present to us, what the process they have to go through to do that.
So if there is a request for a presentation to the Board of Police Commissioners, we would ask that people put that request into the clerk's inbox at clerks@halifax.ca or by contacting our office directly. If commission members do receive a request for presentation, we would ask that you pass that on to us and we will work with the person putting in that request to bring it forward to an agenda review committee to see if that presentation can happen at a Board of Police meeting or if there's a better avenue for that presentation to occur.
Great, thank you. If there's no further comments or questions, we'll move on to number 9, information items brought forward, which there are none. So moving on to reports, 10.1.1, HRM Wortley Report recommendations in preparation for 2-year Wortley Report summary. So I'm going to pass this to Chief Estella and we'll start the discussion from there.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and through you, a couple quick updates, and then I'll talk a little bit about the 2-year plan. A committee has been established, as you know, to look into the tracking and recording of race-based data. It's chaired by Deputy Chief Don McLean, along with Kimberly Franklin from the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. Inspector Aaron Pepper also sits on that committee from the RCMP, and there's a number of community members that also sit. Of note, and by way of update, Dr. Timothy Bryan has completed a report to the committee on the collection of race-based data. What does it look like? Those kind of things. I haven't seen the report myself, but the report is sitting with the committee. They're currently reviewing it, and they are gearing up to have another meeting at the end of May. So hopefully we'll have further information on what that might look like going forward at our June meeting. As everyone knows, the street check ban is still on. And year to date, we've had 12 requests from members of the public checking out their street check information through the Freedom of Information process. We've discussed at a couple meetings now, and most recently at Agenda Review, preparing and presenting a 2-year Wortley report. And we've agreed and had some discussion, Chief Superintendent Gray and I, that we would bring that forward in July at the OPC meeting there. And subject to any questions, that's my update.
Thank you, Chief. And on our end, so as we discussed how this 2-year report would look, we had that discussion at the previous meeting. on items we want to see in that, and the chiefs gave their timeline on when they could present that information. For me as the chair representing the commission, I'll be, but I'll say we'll as the royal wheel, be reaching out to the Department of Justice to get an update from them, because they're working on a few initiatives that some of it stems from the Wortley report and some of it are initiatives that they're taking on. So making sure that we have that as our information. And it also, I think, would be important to reach out to the Human Rights Commission and DPAD, who really started the discussion for the Wortley report to get and those discussions, we'll see what will come out of it. But I think it's important that we reach out to them if we're going to prepare this report to get feedback from them. So yeah, that we're aiming for July. We'll put it all together and present it. Not sure exactly how we will present it, but we will have something to present. And as we go forward and get to that final stage, we'll make sure that commissioners have an opportunity to give their feedback before we do a final approval there. Yeah, Commissioner Beckler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. I'm just wondering, is there any sort of public component to the 2-year report? Is it going to be sort of a public event, very much like the apology was at the library? Just wondering if that's going to factor in at all. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner, through you, Chair. The report and the update is planned to be public. It will be a document, public presentation. My view, subject to the Board of Police Commissioners, is that it would be made at the July meeting. But that's certainly the purview of the board, how that looks and how it takes place.
So we can, again, as the chief said, really thinking it would be something that we present at the board. But if we want to, as the commission, think it should be a broader discussion and release, happy to have that discussion as we go forward. I've never thought about that, but it could be a good idea to do. I'm not exactly sure what it would be, a press release or a press conference or etc. But I think it's definitely worth having that discussion for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what form or it would take either, but I think it is worth having the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. Good comments. Just looking here, yeah. So that's it for me in terms of what I had to say on our end for the commission. I'm not sure if any other questions or if either of the chiefs want to expand further. Yeah, Chief Gray.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, just want to confirm that Chief Kinsella and I did discuss July, so the RCMP is fine with that timeline. Looking forward to the committee getting together and agreeing on these things. I think that the format is one thing, but just the presentation piece, I would agree with the chief, and that through the board would be appropriate. And then thoughts from yourself, coming as chair in regards to other public or consultation would definitely need to be considered. But Dan and I are definitely on the same page in the timeline. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so seeing nothing further on that, there's no motions or to approve or to discuss there. Got the update from the chiefs. I'm going to 10.1.2, update on Know Your Rights campaign. And I believe passes on to Chief Costello again.
Sorry, Chair, I missed it if you have a question there.
Yeah, so the update to Know Your Rights campaign, we chatted during agenda setting on this, and I know you have an update on it, and then I'll follow up with some information as well.
Okay, thank you, and sorry about that. And through you, Chair, to the commission, I just have to give a little bit of context on how the idea came about and where we are today. So in March of 2019, the Wortley report came out, and as part of its recommendation, it stressed the importance of educating community members for the rationale for police interactions, particularly street checks at the time, and it proposed the possibility of creating a Know Your Rights campaign, although not specifically mentioned. Recommendation 4.10 talked about developing public education program for Black and minority youth and how that should focus on teaching youth about their rights during police interactions. Recommendation 4.12 talked about developing additional training modules that will improve officer adherence to the principles of procedural justice and ensure respect for civil rights during all civilian encounters. In June of 2019, a motion was brought forward at the BOPC to create a plan to respond to the Wortley recommendations, including a Know Your Rights campaign. I started my role as chief in July of 2019, and soon thereafter started my consultations with the African Nova Scotian community, which led to the November 2019 apology. As part of my consultations with the community, it was very clear that a Know Your Rights campaign was required. As part of the work we had initiated, it was related to the commitments of the apology, and we had discussions with the Department of Justice, who expressed interest in leading a Know Your Rights campaign. The rationale was to make it more of a provincial approach. If you were to have dealings with the police in Nova Scotia, you would know your rights regardless of where you stopped or were stopped or where you interacted with the police. And we were looking to have it be current and consistent with all legislation. Discussions initially were held in the early part of 2020, and we were in the process of organizing some focus groups at the time, and this was led by the Department of Justice, but COVID fell upon us and things kind of came to a bit of a halt. I can't talk about the specifics of the delay, but I know COVID was a big part of it. And the other piece of this was throughout the discussions and even more recently, there has been discussions about the legislation itself and the definition and application of suspicious activity and how it relates to police interactions between the police and the public. So, you know, my view, and certainly it's for consumption of the board and their deliberation, is, you know, we have to decide whether we're going to press ahead with an HRM related Know Your Rights campaign. You know, I can have consultation with Chief Superintendent Gray and see what's happening at the federal level. Or we can let the legislation play out, get a clear definition of the suspicious activity, and have further dialogue with the Department of Justice on where we go from there. So we have more of a provincial product that everyone can, you know, relate to and understand. So my recommendation that in order for the campaign to be received well and to cover off some of the aspects that are not yet fully clear, particularly around the definition of suspicious activity, that we wait for the work to be completed at a provincial level. And it's important, you know, that if we are going to do a Know Your Rights campaign, that we do it properly and accurately and in full consultation with the community, because that's going to be, you know, very important, not only with our law enforcement stakeholders, but, you know, DPAT and other organizations within the province. So I'll leave it there and await instruction from the. Happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from commissioners at all? Yep, Commissioner Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, I don't know if we've done this before, but it's one of the things that I'm going to be speaking about on the Governance 101 conference that I took place with Commissioner McDougall. It spoke of the importance of board members having opportunities to be part of the community engagement dialogues. And I wanted to know, have we been able to do that in the past? And would there be an openness, or at least I'd like to have you consider the openness of the commissioners being able to be folded into the community engagement. I think it's a really important piece on our knowledge and uptake, and be able to speak to our community who we are serving, as well as you, in supporting each other. So just, can you comment on that?
Yes, I can, Commissioner, and through you, Chair, to the Commission. So I think fundamentally, and I'll give you a couple examples in just a minute, fundamentally, board participation at all levels where they can in engaging with the community to, you know, come up with the best plan forward is important and exceedingly relevant to how we move forward. Helps you with your governance role, helps you with better understanding of some of the operational things that occur. So we have had a number of engagements from board members just in my time here over the past 2 years, where board members assisted with recruiting. Board members often attended town halls where I was presenting and participated in those. So there's great opportunity, and we can certainly involve yourself or anyone else on the board as we go forward. There hasn't been a lot lately because of COVID, but we have, in person wise, but we certainly will continue to do our virtual town halls as we go forward, and subject to, the chair's input and the board itself, happy to have the board involved along the way.
Anything further, Commissioner? Okay, thank you. Anything from other members at all? No. Okay, so I'll just follow up really quickly on something that's related but unrelated, because one of the questions that came from this report, well, this was a motion from the commission that had other items attached to it, community engagement, as mentioned, the Know Your Rights campaign, and the report, et cetera. And one of the things that we realized, speaking to the clerk and the chief, is we don't have an easy way to look back on motions that have been passed previously from the commission for us to reference, so we're able to track and have these discussions. For me, I made this motion around the Know Your Rights campaign, but for many reasons, as we can all understand, it's one of those things that got lost in the shuffle. But there wasn't an easy way for us as the commission to say what are the things that we've asked for and what's the status on this. So Ian, clerk, and other folks are going to look at a way that we can, as the commission, have an easier way to reference things that have happened in the past. And I'm not sure how far back we're going to go, but definitely as motions get passed, we need to be able, as the commission, to make sure that we're following these motions and we're meeting what we've asked for, but also just for the public as well, to be able to know that we're following up on these motions. And even the chiefs, we don't want it to seem like they're not trying to meet these motions or meet the direction that we're asking. It's just sometimes when we're not able to follow up or easily follow up, things get lost around other priorities. So that is something that's going to be worked on, and when that system comes through, we'll have that discussion and see if it works for commissioners. Ian, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to it, but I see Commissioner McDougall, your hands up.
I just want to comment on having a record that's easily accessible for us and maybe for the public too, but it's really critical and it's very easy for the documents and decisions to sort of end up in some file, but it's really important for us. And you raised this, Lindell, at an agenda meeting, I believe, and I know that council has a process, and it would be so good for us to have a similar kind of record to be able to access. So I totally support this.
Thank you. Seeing nothing further from members, so again, Chief, thank you. Oh, yes, Chief Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Seeing as I was on the agenda in regards to the Know Your Rights campaign.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
So I just want to, initially the RCMP participated in the Know Your Rights campaign in good faith, considering they were thinking that it would be a provincial program. So I agree with Chief Kinsella in that, because there are implications as well with our other partners in policing with NS chiefs. And so if the board considers an HRM specific program, then the RCMP as the provincial police would be responsible for rolling out a provincial program anyway. So certainly at your direction, but I would support Chief Kinsella's earlier comments in regards to going back to the Department of Justice and seeking some direction or some provincial focus on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So seeing nothing further on that, as we have discussions, we'll talk more about the Know Your Right campaign, and as the provincial bodies meet, but at the same time, we'll also try to make sure that we're keeping track as best as possible around that item and more. So there's no motion attached to that item. So we're going to the next, which is the members of the Board of Police Commissioners, 10.2.1. This is the BOPC committee on the defining defunding police. So where we're at now, we had a meeting, I think it was previous to our last commission meeting. It might have even been between, it's hard to keep track, but we had a discussion around some of the outstanding items, dates of engagement, how the committee will structure their schedule and the survey, how we will communicate these items to the public. So through website, how public can communicate with the committee itself. So providing correspondence or if they have any questions, etc. So we, as the commission and HRM, we provided from our best knowledge, all the information to answer some of those outstanding questions around how the public will communicate with the committee. Resources needed to hold the meetings. So we're really just now waiting to hear. Oh my goodness, I got a frog. Excuse me. Let me just mute myself real quick. So now we're just waiting to hear back from Al Jones and the committee to just get that final schedule, what items they want to be on. We're going to have a landing page on our website, potentially. We want to make sure that they're still agreeing to this, potentially, that will have all the information on meeting dates. And these would be virtual, just to be clear, these will all be virtual meetings. And also committee members, the survey, where that would be housed, and et cetera, et cetera. So we provided that information, so we're just waiting to hear back if that worked for them, and we're also waiting to get the schedule on timelines. So the only outstanding question is the timeline. If the timeline that we agreed upon is going to be met, and we're waiting to see from the committee if that timeline, and I believe that was July. I have to open up the terms of reference really quickly, unless Commissioner Blackburn and McDougall, if you remember off top, what that date was.
For the report, you mean?
Yeah.
I thought that last we spoke with Professor Jones, it was towards the end of July.
Yeah, I'm just looking back. Yeah, it was end of July. So yeah. Not sure if the timelines have been affected or not. We'll find out once we get some more information. I know that's coming soon. So we're going to still say that we're aiming for the end of July for those items, unless we hear otherwise. And that's really it. I'm not sure if anyone has any further comments or questions, but that is the update on that item. Seeing no one in the chat and seeing no one jumping up, we're going to move on to the Management Employee Relations Committee. So the meeting was held, and you know what? I didn't save the meeting minutes. Chief, do you mind jumping in real quick while I pull this up? I thought I had it on my screen, but I don't. There we go. All right, there we go. Sorry for that. So the meeting was held on the April 13th. Yeah, April 13th was the last meeting, and few items were discussed. Really the only one I can really speak to today, and this is, I want to have further discussion on this, and I'll tell you in a second. So officers continue to get the vaccines, and that's been a priority because they've been added to the list of essential workers. So that is continuing to happen, and the chief and the senior management are working to make sure that resources are there so officers are able to get their vaccines when spots are available. And the question that I wanted to bring to the board for us to have a discussion on related to the, actually, no, it wasn't, I got the wrong minutes. Sorry, that was not the correct date of the last meeting. But the question that I want to bring to the board was looking at this item, the Employment Management Relations Committee, a lot of what's, and I've had an opportunity to attend two of them, a lot of what is spoken about at that meeting is very operational, very personnel. So a lot of it can't be shared publicly at our meetings because it's dealing with either service enhancements or service questions or issues between the HRP and the union. It could relate to specific officers or hiring or promotions, many things that are very, very personnel related. So the question here for you as commission is, do we feel that it's beneficial to have these updates, because there's not much we can update on this committee publicly, or do you want to think about only having updates come from the committee when there's something that's relevant that we should share with the board? Because this is a reoccurring item that on all of our agendas, and there's not always something that we can share. So really just want to have a discussion how members feel if we should continue to have this as a recurring item, or should it be something that we only have on the agenda if there's something that can be shared that's of substance for the commission. And feel free to jump in. And this is really just a discussion. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just for discussion. Commissioner McDougall.
So I think I would leave the discretion to whoever is the member on the Management Employee Relations Committee to bring information to us if it's relevant to the board. As you say, and I sat in on a number of these meetings at one point a couple of years ago, and it is pretty operational. I mean, at some points there was conversation about the weight of vests and where people put their notepads and that sort of thing, and I thought it was interesting, something I didn't know about, but it really was related primarily to the operation and exactly how members of the service conduct their own operations and what they do day to day. And it wasn't necessarily a governance or a policy governance issue. So I would suggest that you as the member at this point, and going forward, whoever is the member, might be able to make those kinds of decisions, and we can take this off as a standing item and even consider a written report if there's anything to report. Just a suggestion.
Sorry, Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, I tend to agree with Commissioner McDougall on this one. I think this is sort of a subcommittee of Board of Police Commissioners, just like we serve on subcommittees at other boards and just thinking about my time on Halifax Water, that we did also have to spend some time either on audit and finance or health and safety, and then it was left up to the member who is on those subcommittees to report back to the main meetings. So I think we'll leave that judgment up to the member that attends those meetings and can report back to us with items as they deem necessary. We can trust their judgment, I think.
Great, thank you. So what I'll take back and what I take from those two pieces is, let's remove this as a recurring item, and then as we have meetings, and just for a correction, the last meeting was on May 5th. So May 5th was the last meeting of the management employee relations. And if there's something that should be discussed, we'll put it on the agenda for the meeting, and we'll just do it that way, either written or verbal, whatever makes sense. No issues with putting items on as they come up. Okay, all right, great. Seeing no one, I don't think we need a motion for that, because that would just take us at the agenda setting. We can decide if we want to put that or not. All right, so thank you for that, colleagues. Moving on to 10.3.2, Commissioner Kent, Canadian Association of Police Governance and Governance Summit. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that particular day, I was able to get into some of the sessions, not all of them, unfortunately, but I did my best. I will just go through a few things. So the main focus around the day was, of course, around board relationships, board interaction with the operations of the policing services, specifically board orientation, board effectiveness. There were some panel discussions in associated to each of those. We had representation on the panel of experts from Ontario Association of Police Commission, Calgary, Ottawa, York, Edmonton, Toronto, and Vancouver. So it was fairly broad presentations from different types of cities with different challenges at play. I think the fundamental thing that I got out of that this panel discussion was and these presentations was the relationship between the board and the chief, in our case chiefs, that it is the critical piece, of course, to allowing us to do the job that we are meant to do in support of the operations of the policing service and the community expectations. And now in this case, of course, our community is our public. So who are we doing our job for? Which it's our community. So that's why I raised that question around our community engagement. The one of the things that came out of one of the presentations around the board and the chief relationship was that the employee for us, the way it was presented was the employee in this case was the CEO and the chief. If we look at it from a perspective of the board being the architects of the big picture and the chief and or the CEOs being the builders to make it happen, to put it all together and what we envision. I thought that was a good analogy to sort of put it into perspective. There was a very good session on pandemic policing. There was a lot of resources that came out of this conference around clarification of roles of the chief and or CEO, and role of the board. The information around COVID that I pulled out that seemed a little different than what we have is there is some of the cities, other jurisdictions have forums where police chiefs and board members can have a more of an organic conversations around issues versus being in a board meeting that is at a very structured, of course, is transparent and documented. But sometimes they talked about the importance of sometimes these conversations which lend to building relationships between the board and the chief. They talked about other platforms. I think that's something that would be worth looking into a little bit. One of the sessions that I found very helpful was on board effectiveness and understanding of operations around board evaluation and outcome operations. I think we have lots in place. Everything that I heard, I was kind of reflecting on what do we have in place and what could we grow on. I'm cautious as well in saying we could grow on it because I've been so involved for so little short a period of time that I don't want to say we're not doing it when in fact it's been there or something. But around measurable outcomes and expectations of the chiefs in relation to the work we expect them to be able to be doing, but also what they can expect for us to be doing. So those outcomes go both ways, and reasonably so. Community engagement, again, I found that very interesting. I've always been one for wanting to experience firsthand what the public are talking about, so we can understand it when we are talking about policy and priorities and such. I wondered, so I didn't take a lot of notes during that presentation. I still have access to all of the presentations, and in fact, in one of them, it was suggested, which I think it's true, around the board effectiveness with working with the chiefs, that some of the presentation that we received during that conference should and could be available to boards that we were representing. So I wonder if I have a question related to that for Andrea. If she doesn't already know, it might be worth us checking in to see if there are copies of those presentations that we in fact can share with all of the board members. I think that, Carol and I both participated, but we're coming from our experience and our backgrounds and our interests, but I think that it would be helpful maybe for those who have not been there to see if we could get that shared. So I found it helpful. It's not as interesting, and I don't think we get as much out of it online as we would if we were able to attend such an event. But those are my biggest takeaways are that recurring theme was that the relationship between us and the chiefs is the thing that's going to help us be successful. And with board member changing and turnover, we always have to be mindful, I think, of giving new board members opportunities to build on those relationships. COVID causes its challenges, but that I think is the number one thing that we should be giving some thought to. Maybe Carol has something else that she might want to offer. I don't know. And I don't know if that's the kind of report you're looking for or not, but I didn't know I was going to be doing it, so I didn't take a whole lot of notes.
That's fine. That's great information for me on my end. I don't know if other commissioners want to get you to expand on items more, or Commissioner McDougall, you want to add comments. But for me, that was a great insight.
Good.
The only comment I would add is when we signed up to do this, it gave us 10 spaces. So we can, for the next one in June, because we've already committed to that, we should make sure that every commissioner at the time, as well as perhaps Andrea, Ian, and anyone else, to make up our 10 so that the emails are included.
Yeah.
And then people have access to the information. I'm sure I actually have a meeting tomorrow with the executive director of CAPG, and we'll ask her just to clarify whether we can give a link to everybody. But I'm sure we can, because we did have 10 spots, and I think we only used 3 or 4 of them. So it's, I'll check and I'll just get back to Andrea and she can circulate as long as it's appropriate. But I think when we come to June, we should just sign up every commissioner, and if they're available, they can take advantage, or they can look afterwards and just learn as much as possible as we keep going. And thank you very much for that, Becky, because it was just good to hear your perspective too. And so that I understand and hear what's important to you. And I think it's good for all of us to know that. Thank you.
Can I offer a little bit more on that, Mr.
Yep.
Chair?
Yep.
Yeah, so Carol, I think that's a fabulous idea because, I mean, we all have lots of commitments and we all have limited amount of time, and to give up, 4 or 5 hours is hard enough at the best time in the work we do just as us as counselors, but we do it. And if we think even attending one session and we each kind of get a lot of detail out of that versus, 1 or 2 of us trying to cover everything, it might be useful, another way to sort of carve up some of these longer day-long opportunities, but they are opportunities that I think are helpful to hear, just to see if if we're on the right track, if there's any new ideas or models of approaching this kind of commission. So I think that's a great idea. And they're really easy to come and go, get into. It was a really well put together platform, and on the website was really, really user friendly.
Great. Thank you for that update. So the only piece is Andrea, you'll follow up, or no, Carol, are you gonna follow up to see? Okay, so Carol, you're gonna follow to see if that information can be shared with us, and then we'll distribute it as we usually do through Andrea to the commission, or to me to the commission. We'll figure it out, but we'll make sure that if we can share it, everyone will get copies for sure. Anything further? No. All right. Thanks again for that. So we will go to the chief's updates, starting with Chief Kinsella. If you could start with yours, that'd be great.
Sure, Chair, and through you to the commission. So with the recent spike in COVID-19, HRP has continued to engage, educate, and enforce when necessary the current COVID restrictions. We evaluate each situation on a case-by-case basis and take appropriate action while keeping in mind our public safety priorities and resources. Enforcement of the restrictions remains critical to our response to the overall strategy to curb the pandemic. The public health order issued last week in conjunction with the injunction provides additional enforcement direction to help us curb the spread. And as always, we will use all measures at our disposal to protect public safety. And this is a time for all of us to take the measures to heart, I believe, and we need people to re-educate and educate themselves on the directives. I'm sure the commission is aware. We had a very difficult situation over the weekend with significant public health risks, and some serious steps had to be taken to ensure that the restrictions and regulations were followed, and we worked together to stop the spread of the virus. And it's unfortunate, and despite repeat engagement, educations, and warnings, there's still a number of individuals who continue to bend and break the rules and take unnecessary risks. So just a reminder about the education piece, and please, I would encourage everyone to read the information that was released on Friday from the Public Health Department and the Department of Justice. Last week was National Police Week. On our social media platforms, we celebrated both our members who proudly serve our communities and all of our valued community partners who help us in countless ways. We really can't do the job of policing without our community supports. Road safety continues to be a top priority for the Halifax Regional Police. This month's road safety theme is motorcycle safety. Throughout the month of May, HRP's social media platforms will feature several educational messages around safety and ensuring that motorcycles that are on the road are well maintained and properly serviced and all those kind of things with appropriate equipment, tires, etc. And another example is ensuring that everyone who is riding a motorcycle has an appropriate approved helmet that is not expired. And members of HRP Traffic Unit continue to enforce the rules of the road and they continue to issue summary offense tickets for drivers, primarily for speeding and distracted driving. And we release those statistics on a weekly basis. As always, we encourage citizens to call 911 if they ever see a dangerous or impaired driver on the road, so we can try to respond and take that threat off the road. We're focusing our efforts to connect with the community through virtual means. Using our social media channels, HRP continues to celebrate certain occasions, including Mental Health Week, International Firefighters Day, National Nurses Week, and International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia, just to name a few. And subject to any questions, that's my update.
Thank you, Chief. First is Councillor Blackburn, or Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Chief Kinsella, for that. And very much appreciate the press releases that follow the enforcement blitzes. It really does, set it out, and you realize just, how many folks you're pulling over at a time with these enforcement blitzes. So it's great to see that being made public as well. Just wondering, how are we doing for members off sick? How are we doing with sort of folks with exposure to COVID? Is it putting you in a tight spot with staffing? Just wondering how we're doing in that department.
So thanks for the question, and through you, Chair, to the Commission. We continue to work and provide support to our members where appropriate. We have experienced, just like everyone else, occasions when we've had to take action, and there is some people that occasionally are off of work. I can't get into too many details because it is a personal and health matter, but we are, encouraging vaccinations, trying to get our members out to get the vaccinations. And our priority is always going to be ensuring that we have that frontline response to get to our priority 1s and 2s and 3 calls. And we'll continue to do that and adjust and scale our responses accordingly. But I think to your overall question, we're doing okay considering we're in the 3rd wave of the pandemic, and we'll continue to work together with all of our stakeholder groups to ensure that we're delivering on our policing promises of priority safety.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for Chief Kinsella? No. I'll ask 2 questions. Just follow up on the question that was just asked by Commissioner Blackburn. Do we have an idea of what percentage of the force has been vaccinated, or do we even track that?
So I don't have exact numbers for you. Our goal certainly is to get all of our frontline members vaccinated. And I can tell you that we're doing very well. Public health has been extremely supportive. And we basically are getting members vaccinated pretty much on a daily basis, although it does ebb and flow. So it's predetermined, pre-organized appointments, and then others that may become available throughout the course of the day. We're responding to get our membership done. But I don't have the exact number, but our goal certainly is all of our frontline members, and then branch that out from there to our support teams and those that are doing all of the great work that are being done by the men and women of the Halifax Regional Police, but perhaps are not as frontline as our members that are out on patrol.
Great, thank you. And just to follow up on the weekend protests and rallies. So there's two aspects. There's the injunction, which referenced the public health issue in the rally. I can't think of the group, and it's not even important to name them specifically, but it mentioned the anti-mask group within the injunction directly. But at the end, and this is where I want either clarification from you or Marty, the injunction mentioned all types of gatherings outside of public health. Was that the purpose? Because there's been some confusion that the injunction was for one type of rally. So I'm just wondering if you could clarify that if you're able to.
So through you, Chair, to the Commission, and Mr. Ward can provide any information after. My interpretation of the injunction is that it applies to any gathering subject to all the rules that are in the injunction itself, that may occur anywhere in the province that are in contravention of the public health protocols and restrictions, and was not strictly related to the planned event for Citadel Hill.
Okay, got you. So in general sense, then again, because I know there are certain aspects that we can't get down in details, but if somebody is looking to do a rally or protest because of these orders, does HRP give permission? Do they have to go to the province? Because there's been some conflicting information that we either as HRM or HRP allow things to happen, and then that overrides any type of order from the province. So I think I'm just wondering if you can clarify that as well, because I think there's some confusion too around how that works if somebody wants to organize a rally or protest. Yeah.
So through you, Chair. So my understanding is that first and foremost, I'll say the police do not give permission for rallies or protests or demonstrations. We do our very best to make sure that people are given the opportunity to do it safely and be provided, those kind of things when they're forming up for those purposes under the, their right to protest, peaceful protest, all those kind of things. My understanding is that the public health orders are not overridden by any permission given either from the city or by the police. We go by the public health orders. We've got changes in the orders themselves late in the week last week, and then the injunction on Friday that provided additional measures for the police to assist in keeping the community safe.
Yep, Marty.
I would only add to that the instigation for the injunction application was that particular rally, right? But it has a broader application, which is, so the province wouldn't have to come running back to the courts, on a repeating basis, right? In order to, the other thing is that it requires, observance of the restrictions that have been put in place under the Public Health Act. And, from time to time, there are questions of interpretation with respect to those, right? And Dr. Strang's office has been very cooperative for most groups in giving them an indication of where they stand with respect to that. So I think it's you don't have an application process as such, right? But if some group wants to know whether they think they'd be in violation of the restrictions, then they should be contacting Dr. Strang's office for direction, really.
Okay. And then with the injunction, was there a date attached to the injunction at all? Or
well, you see, the injunction, it's an interesting thing, because the way it works is normally in a court proceeding, you normally give notice to the other side, right? So they can appear and contest it, right? But there's an exception to that when you have an urgent situation where you could have irreparable harm. And so that's an ex parte situation. That's what happened here. The province went on Friday and they didn't go on notice to the other side. The other side would have the opportunity, if they want, to ask for a later full hearing into it, right? To contest it if they wanted to, right? But my impression from at least from the news reports was that they would not be, they hadn't shown any indication they were going to go back to court to challenge it, right? On a full hearing, right? I think the only thing you saw was the sort of self-help response on the weekend, right? So
right. And really quickly too, just to help clarify the legal aspect. So you mentioned that the injunction would relate to a party versus another party. So this party was the province versus who?
Well, the province would appear on behalf of the the Attorney General's Department of Justice, lawyers would appear on behalf of the province, right?
Right.
The province being, Dr. Strang, Department of Health, and those sort of things, right? And it would be directed, and the application would be directed against any groups they could identify, and then any groups at large, right? So
Okay, gotcha.
and that's not unusual. You know, if you have a labor injunction, it's directed sometimes at the particular group, but then anybody else who supports it as well, right? So the court doesn't have to continually have, you know, hearing after hearing to identify new groups. And then normally, and normally the other thing is that the injunction itself is, you know, directed to peace officers, right? Giving them the authority to enforce the injunction, right? And if they, you know, with certain powers that they can exercise, and you know, strictly speaking, if you violate the injunction, you're in contempt of court, right? And you can be brought back in front of the judge for fining or whatever, right?
Right. And again, this happened very recently as of Friday. So if there are questions that you might not be able to answer, please feel free to say you need to get further information. So my last one is as we move forward, so understanding that we have the right to peaceful protest, that is an aspect of our charter, et cetera, et cetera. So if somebody, when I say somebody, a group or organization, et cetera, wants to use that right, how do they do that in a way that doesn't go against public health, or do they have to follow public health, and that means smaller groups, et cetera? So I'm just wondering, understanding that there is a right, but we also have this injunction that does change how things look a little bit.
Well, the injunction doesn't change anything.
Okay.
Injunction merely, all the injunction does is confirm, right? Confirm that there has to be, you know, obedience to the existing public health requirements, right? And there are instances, you know, those are subject to some interpretation where they're unclear. And also there have been instances where you know, where the province or Dr. Strang's office has adjusted those restrictions for certain situations, right? But as they stand as they are. There is no, you know, formalized application process by which you can do something that's not permitted, basically, right? So,
right.
And the police don't, and as the chief said, the police certainly don't have any discretion there whatsoever. The directions of the peace officers are simply to enforce the law as it is. And if you want to change in the law, well, then you approach the province and ask for an exemption or something, right? You know.
Okay. Good. That's very helpful for me. I'm not sure if any other commissioners have further questions on anything at all before I go on to our CMP chief update. See no one in the chat. Thank you, Chief Casella and Marty, for that. Chief Gray.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the Commission. So starting tomorrow, May 18th to the 25th is Road Safety Week. All of our strategies will focus on the traffic services mandate to improve public safety on our roadways by reducing the risk related to the four main causal factors of fatal and serious injury collisions, which are impaired, speeding, distracted driving, as well as occupant restraint compliance. Every day there'll be strategic operations ongoing throughout the district. We've utilized our yearly data to identify the locations in time with the highest volume of traffic for our check stop locations. There's a selective target enforcement plan. And so this is again based on our ComStat data, as well as calls from the public and other data that's related, including school zones, playgrounds, shopping malls, etc. We have a number of impaired driving statistics for the month. We had 23 impaired drivings this last month, ranging from age 9 to 59, and the blood alcohol content from 80 to 300 milligrams. So 19 of the traffic stops came from 19 from the traffic stops and 5 from motor vehicle accidents. And like I like to reinforce every month that thanks to the public, 11 were from 911 calls. So reinforcing the importance of the public reporting erratic or impaired driving. In regards to COVID, I want to have a huge shout out to the dedicated nurses and staff who have been so dedicated in getting our frontline police officers vaccinated. Keeping our officers as a priority at the end of every day has helped us get almost all of our frontline officers with their first shot. We continue to investigate and enforce the Health Protection and Quarantine Act. As you know, significant number of calls every shift, and we're relying on the public to report their concerns relating to HRM restrictions. This again further demonstrates the public's concern, and we're relying on them to keep everybody safe. 52% of our calls are actually coming from the public. And that was my update. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Anything from members at all? Seeing nothing. Commissioner Blackburn.
Hi there. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just had the same question for Chief Superintendent Grant. Just wondering, members, how are we doing? Do you have a lot that are owed or down with COVID or on restrictions? How are you guys doing?
I guess my shout out, thank you for the question through you, Chair. I think the shout out goes to our membership. They've, after all this time, we're still adhering to all the use of our PPE. We've been very fortunate in regards to the number of infections and those that have been had to self-isolate. Again, we had a process put in place last year, and we've relied on it to ensure that our frontline numbers have not gone down. So we are luckily fluid with our resources to transition those from other duties over to frontline if that's necessary. We've been able to do that. But for the most part, we've been very fortunate, but it's through the dedication of our membership that they're still adhering to all of the rules and engaging the public appropriately.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Really quickly, Chief Gray, related to if members of the public want investigation of a public health matter, how does that, with the time the call comes in to when someone responds, how does that play out?
Thank you for the question, Chair. And I think all of our calls are prioritized for the integrated emergency services. And so, but I can articulate that every watch report I see every day, so twice a day, there's a fulsome list of COVID calls that our members are going to and responding to. Again, these are all tiered through the priority, and they are responding to a number of them. So we reinforce and want the public to report when they see something. Obviously, we're complaint driven in this regard, but I also have to say that our members are also doing proactive patrols to areas where we're getting more complaints or more challenges, including parks or beaches, transit stops, etc. So they're also, that's part of their proactive patrols as well.
Right. So if, and this could be a question for you, but even for Chief Costello, if I say my neighbor seems to have a lot of people coming in and out that don't seem to be in the bubble, and I call and say, hey, I feel like my neighbor is having more people, how do officers investigate? Obviously, they're not there every day, so they can't see, but how do they make that observation of, yeah, this person is either against the public health rules, or maybe this is something that we investigate and will monitor? How do they make that determination?
I think it's based on the information that's brought in. Obviously, if it's a report, the members will attend and they'll speak with the potential, the people who are potentially breaching. It is a tiered approach. There's education as well. I think our patience and our steps in regards to education is not as strict as it would have been at the beginning. People should be more educated. However, that's up to our members' individual investigative steps that they're taking to ensure that people are fully informed, and then when necessary, they're laying the appropriate charges.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Seeing no one else in the chat, thank you again, Chief, for your update. So moving on to our final items. There's no added items to this meeting this afternoon. Items for future consideration, there's nothing there. Really quickly, Clerk, I've never asked this question. When it comes to items for future consideration, are these items that members could bring up at a meeting for us to consider, or how do items end up in the items for future consideration piece?
My apologies. I was just trying to unmute. Items for future consideration, they can be brought forward to us as items that are pending by the members of the commission, and we can put them in there, noting that they'll be coming forward at a future meeting, much in a similar way they have with information items. If there's an information item that would like to be brought forward that comes forward at the next meeting, items for future consideration is an opportunity as well.
Okay, got you. No, that's great. Thank you. So now we are going to move in camera. I asked that if there's no changes or amendments that we move the in camera minutes public. I have a mover and a seconder for that.
I so move, Lisa.
Cool. Moved by Commissioner Blackburn, second by Commissioner McDougall for move the April 19th in camera minutes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Opposed? Say nay.
No.
Thank you. And Commissioner or Councillor Deagle Gammon, thank you for joining us. I'm gonna go in camera.
Going in camera, I figured this is where I leave.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us and hanging in. Oh, if you have anything you want to speak about or follow up, feel free to reach out to any one of us. I'm sure we'll all be happy to share more.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity today. It was awesome.
Thank you very much.
Mm.
All right, so we're going to move in camera for 13.2, the personnel matter, and I believe that we go to the Teams meeting link.
Yes, there's an invitation in your inbox with a in-camera meeting, Microsoft Teams meeting. Everyone should have that. You will enter there, and then we'll be returning to the Zoom public streaming meeting prior to the end to make sure we can ratify and if that needs to be ratified.
All right, great. So thank you everyone who's attending, and we're going to go to the in-camera meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are returning back from the in-camera session. Your mics should be on and your camera is allowed. We can remove the slide and you can start on your call.
It was telling me that the host would not allow me to unmute. So I'm not sure if any other, somebody else is not able to do that, but I don't think, yeah, we don't need. So we're on the camera. Thanks again, colleagues. So now we are looking at if there's any notices of motion from commissioners at all. There are no notices of motion. Looking at the date of the next meeting, which is June 21st, and we will have a presentation to Commissioner Borden on that date to say thank you for her contribution as chair and as a member of the commission in general. So look forward to seeing her again on that date, and I ask for motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I'll adjourn. Mr. Chair, my back is killing me. I had to stand up. So but I wanted you to know I was here.
That's
okay.
fine. All right. We are
Take
adjourned.
Care.
Thanks
Bye.
all. Good day.
Thank you. Take care.